well. And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. And I haven't hit the local recording, so can you change? Anyway, no. So, okay, how you going, Jason?
I'm really good, Jeff. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, good. So I had an exciting conversation at 4 o'clock South Australian time this afternoon. It was, I just feel energized. Like I got off that call and I messaged a person or two. It's like, wow. So feeling good. It feels almost
making
like
things happen.
Yeah.
Things are moving, guys. Things are happening.
Joe's wearing his caramel
Nothing
shirt.
sits still. It's not a caramel shirt, but it's
like
as
a
sweet
Jersey
as
caramel.
having one. Well, mate, I'm just excited. I'm excited to have Jason Wright on the show. He is my fun property friend. Every time I'm having a bad day and I have a chat with Jason, I always come off that call pumped and excited. And that's why I have my fun shirt and my gin and tonic. I am no beer Wednesday this week.
I'm on
It
the
is
water.
all.
NBW,
wrong,
no
Jason.
No. But
I'm excited for this. We've got some golden rules of investing, and Jason shared a lot of these golden rules to us. And there's a lot of value there. So I feel like we're going to try and keep this one to an hour and a half, but there is a boatload of value. We're going to go through current deals, existing deals, previous deals. Like this is going to be a real deal case study of what is it out there in the real world. Like Jason is a property manager in South Australia, an amazing property manager in South Australia. And he sees deals and works with investors every single day. So who better to dive deep into a property investment show, Mr. Jason Wright. I'm pumped to have you, mate. Welcome back.
No, Jeff was just saying, like, I was here a bit over a year ago. It's exciting.
What?
Yeah, it was in June 2022, Joe. Start of June.
Yeah.
And I have a grey hair or two now. So that's what happens when you start.
No one likes a bragger. Wouldn't it be nice to have hair?
Yeah, me having hair is not a problem for me. I'm just gonna. But no, when we first spoke, I didn't appreciate how much knowledge and insight you actually, when we first spoke back in last year. I wanted to get you back on, well, just because you've, as I said, you are a fun property person. You just have that energy and that vibrancy about you. But you also have so much knowledge and wisdom around doing property deals yourself. You're not simply a property manager, and property managers are great whether they invest or not. But you have that, you wear multiple hats, which is just fantastic as a property manager. And
thanks.
What's at before we get into the quotes of the week, I want to ask you a bit ad lib. Why did you get into being a property manager?
So Mum and I were drunk, basically, and got talking about how crap our property managers are and how they don't communicate with us, and wondered whether we could do a better job. And for the most part, turns out we can. We still have our bad days like everyone, lessons to be learned, but the fact is we as a family had a reasonable sized portfolio. We just didn't feel that we were being communicated well. My mum looked after it on behalf of my siblings and my mum and dad, who liked each other at the time, and Mum felt that it was a job for her. Every mid-month or end of month, one of the properties was behind in rent, or there was something on the statement that she didn't know about, and she thought, well, this is weird. So maybe we should do a better job, or maybe we should look into it. So Mum started out on her own to begin with and started working for someone just to see whether she'd like it. And the rest is history.
Wow. And that's the best. Some of the best decisions are made whilst having alcohol, but some terrible decisions also made. But no, that's a fun story to tell people how business started over a few drinks.
Yep.
But
I think this is our 14th year in business, so we've been doing it a long time now.
That's amazing. Kudos to you guys. And if people have any questions or comments about their own golden rules, or the Adelaide property market, Jason is the quintessential. He's the go-to person in the Adelaide property market as a property manager. So drop those, and we are going to talk first up about the Adelaide property market, how it's sort of traveling along. We do have to do quote of the week, but then we're going to jump into some golden rules of property investing: buying, selling, sort of developing, renovating, and property management. So it's going to be absolutely fun-packed and value-packed. So if you're watching this, post the show, drop us a like, do all those sort of comments, do like good things, and we should ask for reviews again, Joe, but we'll do that at some stage.
Yeah, we'll throw a
quote of the
review.
week, Jason, first up.
Okay, same one I used last time, but I love it. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's Dame Edna Everage. And I think, given that he/she passed away this year, I think it's a good one to revisit. She always says, people ask me, how is it I managed to do so much? And I reply by asking, how is it you managed to do so little?
It's a great quote. It's true. It is a good quote. I just know you, Jason, do not spend as much time in front of Netflix as a lot of other people. That's for sure. You are constantly on the go. So maybe Netflix is to blame. Maybe.
Well, realestate.com is still, even if I've got Netflix on, which is, I go through phases, but it's been quite some time since I've turned on my television. But for me, realestate.com is my entertainment. Who needs a Netflix channel?
Funny stuff that happens on.
Cut some incidental spending, kids.
That's probably that could be one of your golden rules, perhaps. Figure out what your priorities are with your spending.
That is. What about you, Jeff? What's your quote of the week, mate?
So mine's a bit. I like to theme mine based on the topic, and it is the golden rule is that there are no golden rules. So that's by George Bernard Shaw. So I've kind of just I've thrown the curveball there with about golden rules. But I think that to me means that yes, whilst these are Jason's, and whilst a lot of people would agree, and I love a lot of what Jason said in these. I think it's important to run your own race and tread your own course rather than sort of saying, yes, Jason's, we have to absolutely abide by what Jason says in these rules. I think it's important to adapt them to your own life and your own situation and all that sort of stuff because everybody's story is unique, largely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very true. And what works for Jason may not work for someone that wants to buy, units and townhouses and are very good at making money in that. Everyone, there's always a way to make money in real estate. There's always something that you can be doing and different to everyone else. And if you copy and do what everyone else is doing, you're probably going to get what everyone else has got. My quote of the week, I have one. Money is a tool, not a master. Use it wisely, lest it uses you. That is a quote that I just pulled up 2 minutes ago. So it has really no intrinsic value to me, like your ones did, guys. So I apologies, but from what I can gather from that quote is it's pretty solid. You don't want money to use you; you want to use the money. Can anyone else pull any value from that quote?
No, definitely.
I can. It's a tool, simple as that. And people go, money doesn't buy happiness. It absolutely doesn't buy happiness, but it gives you choices.
Yeah, I'd rather be if I'm going to be miserable, I'd rather be miserable in first class than in coach or like at the back or not even on the plane in the first place. But yeah,
cattle class.
To me that Joe,
at least you're on a plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing something.
But also the money is a terrible master and it's a terrible servant and a great. Oh, sorry, you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a great servant and a terrible master. So if you let money master you, then I think you're probably living things potentially wrong.
Well, it's funny. Some of the most wealthiest people that I know just think about deals and property and money as exactly that. It's just a tool. When they talk about, I can talk about a $300,000 deal, and then I talk about $1 million deal, and I'm kind of like, oh, $1 million. And then I've got a friend that's a developer, and they're like, oh yeah, but it's a $2 million deal. But if you break it down onto a napkin, you can make 20%. So who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what that big number is. And here I am worrying about $2 million thinking, oh my gosh, that's massive. And it's like, no, you talking about? No, it's just numbers. It all adds up. It all stacks up. So go for it and do it. Oh, okay. Yeah. And it works. Everyone else is scared of it.
The very first big deal I ever did when I was in commercial real estate, I sold a piece of real estate that was a dump, but I saw potential and I sold it to a very, very wealthy man who is a risk taker and said, this is what I see for it. And I said, it was a dump. How did I talk you into spending $2.2 million on this deal? And he goes, I kind of justified it by going, it's more than my plane and less than my boat.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's, on that note, get into introducing who this amazing man is in front of us. But before we do that, we're going to go to a quick snapshot ad break. The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia, and not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey. Good move.
We are back. Everybody's back. So, who is the person? If you don't know Jason, because it seems like a lot of people already, from the love you were getting in the comments once I put this post up, you have a wealth of experience in property management, business development, but you also used to work in a cafe, restaurant, and the catering sort of business, and yeah, I think that in Adelaide and Melbourne, so that must have been really fun. But I think for the thing I love about you is your passion for helping the everyday person to build property, build wealth through property. So it's but you just sort of treat everybody with the utmost respect, I think, as well. And you just sort of want to see people hopefully get ahead. But you've also been involved in, you've been a finalist in Real Estate Institute of South Oz in 4 times. So you haven't won it yet, but
No, I won my very first year.
Oh, okay. So I read that and it says finalist. Usually, no, but I think you should have won it at least 2 or 3 times. What were they talking about? They must have. Yeah. But no, you've done plenty, and I don't know how big, you've got a decent sized property portfolio as well. So you eat your own cooking as well. So that's why you are our go-to person in South Australia. So. Thanks. What I missed there, Jason? Anything that?
No, not at all. Look, the principles between hospitality and real estate are exactly the same, and I think that's why I was when I was interviewed when I won Rookie of the Year in real estate in my first year. They went, "Oh, change of industry. How are you coping?" I said, "I haven't changed industry. I've worked in the customer service industry since I was 10. I learned to pull a beer in my parents' pub on my 10th birthday, and I've worked in the customer service industry ever since, and the only thing that's changed is the average price of the plate."
Yeah. I like that. I love that sort of mindset. Like how good is your ability to sort of just translate your transferable skills across the things? So,
Yeah.
On that note, I'm gonna.
Yep.
I don't know if you read the thing. I read the sort of document we sent you, but we usually ask people about their favorite property investment. But what is your favorite renovation or development? I'm gonna let you pick one of those.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh, he hasn't thought about it.
The one, and I'm going to share it a little later when I share some real live deals. But my very first joint venture with my mate Ross is my favorite deal of all time. Ross and I became mates because we got into a fight because one of my clients bought his first deal from him, and he may have made some mistakes and then tried to put it on my buyer, and I may or may not have told him fairly honestly the mistakes he made, and he realized. So he called me one day and said, "Hey, I want to buy this deal. I don't have enough money. How much money have you got?" And I said, "How much money do you need?" I'm like, so then I'm like, "Mum, how much money have you got?" And so we did this deal together, and it was our very first one together. We did a renovation at the front, Hammerhead subdivision at the rear. I moved down into the house down south in a place called Morfett Vale, and lived on site for 4 weeks during the renovation, and it was fun. It was, honestly, we pulled walls down with sledgehammers, did a lot of it ourselves. Ross hates renovating. I love renovating. It was my favorite deal. It's the one deal I wish we'd kept.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's the problem with renovating and subdividing and selling off is you lose it. You lose that sucker. Yeah, well, that's super interesting. I didn't realize that's how you guys got together. So that's a fun little.
That wasn't our
story.
first deal. We'd been mates a bit, but yeah, that's how we got together. He a deal on Richards Drive was his very first deal, and he cut the rear block and did a house and land package in the back, and my client bought the front house from him, and then he called me up going, "Your gutter is leaking into my backyard. I need you to fix it." I'm like, "Well, the developer was just useless, man. Like he didn't do the drainage properly. It's all his fault. Put it," and he just started laughing, and I'm like, "You're the developer, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah." Coffee, and 15 years later we're best mates.
I wonder if Ross is watching tonight. If you are watching, Ross, say hello. I'm sure it will.
Yeah, tell us what really happened, Ross. Tell us the Ross side of the story.
I feel like Ross would say, "Yeah, that's pretty close. Maybe just missed a tiny detail here."
So Jace, you've been dissecting these golden rules, and I don't know, Jeff, if I'm skipping ahead, but
skip away, young Joe. Skip. Please.
Oh
yeah.
Well, what's one of your favorite? Now, it doesn't have to be the top best, absolutely best money savers, but what is one of your favorite golden rules in property?
My favorite, I'm a buy and hold guy. And that was the very first deal that I did with Ross that I sold something. So I've never been a seller. I've always been a buy and hold guy. And I believe with all my heart, time is your friend. So people buy with the purpose of they're concerned about capital growth. They're concerned about everything. If you buy and you hold, the capital growth takes care of itself. No matter, my very first deal, which I've still got, I paid $42,000 for. It was a dump. Still a dump. But I worked out the other day because I'm like, I've had it for 20 years. And I'm like, no, I haven't. I've had it for 30 years, 29 years.
What's 10 years between friends, though, I suppose?
Have you paid the debt off? Is it done?
A very long time ago. Yeah.
Closed off the account, so no more. Yeah. I just want free rent. But you're totally right. Like time heals a lot of the wounds. Like I did renovation ages ago, and we paid $280 for it. We did a 20 grand renovation. It took it to 360. So that's great. I made, however much in a very short amount of time with only 20 grand. We tripled the money, but then we just held it. And then a year and a half later, it went to 550. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But if I bought the house at 360, it would have gone from 360 to 550. So I think I love renovating because it gets I need my deposit back as soon as I can to recycle and re-go again. However, depending on where you are in situation, like you can buy a solid house and then add value to it. You don't need to add value to it because it's in a really good location and it will have that capital growth as well if it's in a good location in the right area at the right time. So you just
Could
need
be
to
in a crappy location. My second golden rule is buy what you can buy the moment you can afford it, and buy the thing you can afford. Like, it's just because the mistake people make is, and we talked early on about listening to everyone else, and please don't listen to my rules. I'm just a guy with a hobby. My way is not the way, but it's worked for me. It's worked for my family. It's worked for plenty of my friends. But if you stop and wait for the right house at the right price in the right suburb, and this moment in time is the best moment in time to realize that. I know 30 people that should have, could have, would have bought a year and a half ago and didn't. And they're all $150,000 poorer than most of us. Like, that's sad. And they were in the position to buy then, and now they're not. Because
So I think the other mistake, and this sort of talks a little bit to the golden rules, people are waiting for the market to drop, or they're waiting for that sort of magical sort of 15,
and
20%.
How long have we been waiting for the market to drop? Like,
well, it did drop though during it dropped a little bit during
nationally,
after that big run up.
Nationally, it dropped, right? It's like the same with Adelaide. Like Adelaide had a little bit of a dip, but on the outskirts, in where people actually buy real houses, not in the city centre where you're spending silly money. Like the emotional owner occupiers, those did dip in price, which affected the national. So when you look at things nationally, it's not fair. You need to look at the individual market for an area to see, well, actually on the outskirts, like Jason's going to run through some examples that we bought a year ago, and they've gone up $100,000. But nationally, the market's dropped. Adelaide, the market dipped. It hasn't really dropped. It was actually one of that's been the best performance recently, and we can have a look at the charts.
Probably one of the bigger was the northern sort of beaches of Sydney. Those kind of really ultra wealthy sort of suburbs that like 3 million plus. Some of those did they were down sort of 15, 20, 25%. So, but at the same time, the problem is they'd gone up about sort of 30 or 40% before they did. So and at that time, yes, you guys say.
Me personally, I could afford to live in a $1 million house, right? I'm a single guy. Like, that is not an effect. If I had a $700,000 mortgage, I would be up all night. I've got no hair left to lose. Like, it's just not a practical. These people that buy more than they need, I think paying your own mortgage is for chumps. Like, you should have the lowest mortgage possible and pay it off as quickly as possible, because it's bad debt. It's a bloody personal loan. You're paying your own debt. Like, that's terrible. Good debt is where other people pay it on your behalf.
Yeah. So before we get into, we jumped ahead a little bit there. I want to unpack. What are you seeing on the ground in the Adelaide property market at the moment? Because it's still relatively bubbling along quite nicely. It was. I think everybody loves Perth at the moment, but let's like Adelaide was really. People still love Adelaide, but it's sort of lost. It's probably bridesmaid at the moment. But what are you sort of seeing?
12 months, Adelaide's grown 1%.
No, more than 1%. No, it's more than that, isn't it, Joe?
Oh, look, yeah.
You said 1%. What?
Yeah, no.
12-month change. We have so this is the recent Australian dwellings value. So we have a 2.9% increase in the last 3 months. So the property market in Australia has grown 3%, which is absolutely massive. In 3 months to grow 3%. But yeah, when you start to look at the numbers a little bit more, and this is why I just don't spend too much time on these more macro charts. Like we have, oh no, what did I? This is the 3 month change.
3 months, though, Joe.
Yeah, this is the 3 months change. So it's 3 point. Where are we? Yeah, so 3.2 for Perth, 3.2 for Adelaide. Brisbane has actually grown more, so 4.2, and Sydney's grown 4.5. So Sydney might be king at the minute. Regional SA has grown 3.1 alongside. Australia has grown 2.9. So we did have a very small negative dip, but that boom bust. I mean, what's the date period? Here's COVID. So we had COVID and it dipped down a lot. Prices started to rise, and now we are. Have we corrected? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Have we corrected as a market?
Well, I think there are two things driving for us right now. One is the media are saying there's a problem, and I'm not sure whether there is or not. But the fact is, whilst we have people living in an interest rate fear, no one's selling. And so while there's no one selling, I can tell you, and you guys can attest to it, the fact is I'm out on weekends looking for you guys and other clients from a national market in the Adelaide space, going to open home after open home, missing out week in, week out, because there's still 40, 50, 60 groups through an open home, and there's just no stock. There's just not enough stock to buy. So people are still buying a premium for it, or paying a premium for it. There is a little 4-bedroom semi-detached ex-housing trust house in Salisbury North. Now, for people listening, Salisbury North is a relatively low socio suburb, but it's super cool. I really like it because it's the poor cousin to Paralawi. Parafield Gardens, got really great access to the Adelaide CBD. A little semi-detached. The price guide was 359 to 379, but it was a 4-bed, 1-bath. So I said to my client, I'm like, look, this is great buying at 410, 415, because I'll still get 430 to 450 a week for it. It was neat and tidy. 437.5 it sold for. It's attached at a wall. You can't subdivide it. It's a semi-detached. You guys call it a duplex.
It's crazy.
My very first house was a duplex, semi-detached housing trust in Elizabeth North. $42,000, like 10 times. Like, that's mind-blowing to me. That's baffling. And then I'm going to open homes, actively looking for 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom stuff for a client with a budget of $800,000. Missing out, week in, week out, missing out. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah. I mean, this is someone's written down here 500K population growth. It's easy. Buy. Basic supply and demand, and the demand is only growing. And you're right, it is a supply and demand issue. There is a supply of properties. We are not building any. The trades have struggled over the past 2 years to be able to put these houses up, and they're not there. So there is still pricing pressure, and I am a little bit concerned when we have all this immigration. Where are these people going to go? It's going to put a massive uptick on rents, which is going to be absolutely bananas. But I mean, this is what spells opportunity. Like, you can help people by getting investment properties and buying them from owner occupiers. You get to take a little bit of the stress and pressure out of the market by providing someone with housing. So,
well, the owner occ has to go somewhere though, Joe. So where's the owner occupier going? They're going to buy another house.
Look, I will say, in the southern suburbs, I've seen a real slight dip in rental demand and rental prices. It is just coming down a tiny bit. I don't think that's going to be for long. I simply think that Adelaide's winter is wetter and more miserable than it's been in a few years. And so people aren't going out in the beachside suburbs. They're just going, oh, bugger this. The other issues in relation to demand, and immigration is a factor, the fact that people came back during COVID from overseas countries to live here because it's safer. People left Victoria in droves because what self-respecting person would want to live there right now? But that's just me. I used to live in Melbourne and I loved it, but I'm not a Dan fan, but that's okay. But that aside, the other factors that I noted during COVID that we don't talk about are people like just us guys, 2 or 3 single blokes lived together in a share house. Then they had to live together, work together, play together, and that got a little dreary. So the minute COVID changed, 3 guys that shared one 3-bedroom house all went and rented 3 3-bedroom houses, and now all live singularly and now have home offices and a room for their mates to stay on weekends. So that has also put a demand on the rental market.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's what are you?
So
kind
there's
of seeing
less people sharing house post-COVID than there were pre-COVID, and then there was a huge amount of relationship breakdown, and then there were tons of people that moved out of apartments into houses because they wanted dogs. Like there's a pile of factors apart from immigration that have changed the way we live in Australia.
Oh. So what are you seeing? Like, I guess from a rental perspective in Adelaide, like you're talking about the south in the market is kind of dipping a little bit, but then you just told me today you got a ridiculous rent. You got Devonshire at $660 a week. When you what did we? What was it bought for?
Valued it at $580.
Wow.
You told me we'll get $580 for it. We paid $560,000 for the house, and you get it rented for 660 times by 52 divided by 560. That's a 6.1% yield.
But we did add it, and we'll talk about this as a real live deal later on. We did add value, so we are in the process of spending 30 grand for a mutual client, and adding a bathroom and a bedroom and a study. So
that definitely counts. It definitely counts.
It does count.
Anyway, I've digressed here. Jeff, take us away. Jason? This is what Jason and I do. There'll be many.
That's right. I do it too. I was going to step in eventually. I'm going to get myself a cup of tea. But while we do, it's just at the door. So, no. So we're going to talk about these golden rules. So there are a heap of them. But first off, we're going to talk to buying. What are you? We've sort of sprinkled in a couple. But what are your top sort of? Let's unpack a couple of these. And we are going to have a newsletter with Jason sort of featured. It's going to be August, so you need to subscribe to that. Joe, if you have it, drop it in the comments. But what are your sort of key sort of golden rules when buying property?
Well, let's start by assuming that there's a couple of people that are young people starting out for the very first time, right?
Okay.
Understand what your first homeowner grants or stamp duty exemptions are, and take full advantage of them. It might mean that you might have to live there for 6 months. It might mean that you can't, because you can get in with a 3% deposit these days. Like, that's absurd to me. Even if you stayed at home with your parents and left it empty for 3 months and for 6 months, because you have to live in it for 6 months at some stage in the first 12 months. Even if you lived in it left it empty, you're in the market and it's now capitally growing and you're on your way. So understand your concessions. Then stay single, because the mistake young couples make is they go, we're going to buy a house. Well, no. He should buy a house and she should buy a house and take advantage of the grants each. And then they should buy a house. And then you're under 25 and you're 3 houses deep. You're well on the way. The rest is history from there.
It
does vary from state to state. So just be careful on that conveyancing, because I know in New South Wales, once you buy, even if you're a single person, if you get some early, I think that does disqualify you. But speak to your conveyancers. But it must be a
If
little
you're
bit
a
different.
couple, if you're a single, stay single on paper. Anyway, that's just my tips.
Stay single on
Your light
paper.
went out there.
Stay single
Okay.
legally. That is a solid piece of advice. And
Look,
and that's
I'm
something.
48 and bitter twisted. I still think you should stay single. I've given too much of it away too many times.
Yeah, there are some interesting things around trusts, and obviously we can't talk about trust, and we can't give anyone financial advice, and none of that, of course. But I have heard. I used to work in the legal space, and it's interesting about the way that it's worded around the first home buyer grant and owning a trust. So you could purchase a property in the trust, and then following that, you may have the potential to be able to use your first home buyer's grant. Obviously, seek your own independent legal advice, but I've heard some interesting things. So you may be able to do something around that. But I don't know how to cover myself any more than that, Jeff.
Put the disclaimer up. The cop. I love that cop disclaimer.
Well,
no, you don't have to go.
I think as far as disclaimers go, my next tip is you've got a friend in me, which is surround yourself with people who have made mistakes before you.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, we're three mates, we all do it differently. We talk passionately about the mistakes we've made so that the other person doesn't make them. And just ask people. People are proud of the fact that they've achieved what they've achieved in property, and listen to their story and learn by their mistakes. You know, they made their mistakes with their money, and if they're good people, they don't want to see you make their mistakes. That doesn't necessarily mean listen to your mum and dad, because if your mum and dad own their family home, no disrespect, that's a great achievement in any place. And I still love that we still live in the best country on earth where that's a probability more than it is a possibility. But if your parents own one and they've only owned one, then they're probably not the right person to listen to for your advice. There might be a friend or a family member or a cousin or someone that's got 2, 3, 4, or 5. Because, you know, a fellow colleague of ours, Joe, I'd always sat at that 3, 4, and don't know whether she'll be offended if I mention her or not, but Prue, I said to Prue one day, years and years and years ago, I'm like, you know something I don't know. You've got more properties than me. How have you done it? And that's when she talked about trusts and different entities, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and that allowed you to kind of scale and grow to that next level. But that wouldn't have happened if you didn't reach out to that person. And
that's right. And I just asked, and and it was just like that. I just said, hey, you know something I don't know. What is it? And she went, blah. And I went, makes sense. Like, it was a 2-minute conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work? It's very true. I mean, this is how Jeff and I got to know each other. We were just asking questions. We kept asking questions, and we created this group. And then it's just based on trying to understand more, you know. And that's why people love it, is because it's just us bringing on experts like yourself that have been through the ringer, that have been hit left, right, and center with some challenges. This is a bit of a left field question. I mean, what are some of the bigger challenges that you've faced in your property investing journey that have really kind of set you back? Well, not set you back, but made you learn a little bit. What's your biggest lesson from some of that kind of stuff? Because I know you haven't gotten that answer written down, so apologies.
The follow your gut is probably, so the only deal I ever have lost money on, and it was 10 grand. It wasn't a lot, and it was the very first deal I did with another really close mate. And what had happened is he's like, oh, this is the place. It's in a suburb called Osborne. And I said, I don't know why I know this, and I don't know how I know this, but you can't develop in that suburb. It's a dead zone. And he's like, no, you definitely can. And I sought further advice, and It looked like we can, and I made an offer. I was at a boozy lunch. I made an offer to the agent. It's the very first time ever pre-auction in my life that she's like, I'm sending over the waiver. And I'm like, what? I'm not signing a waiver. I've never signed a waiver.
A waiver?
Yeah, because you're buying under auction conditions. She wanted me to sign a waiver that I'd waive my rights to calling off. I signed that waiver. Site wasn't developable. Fortunately, we had a conversation. Fortunately, I was able to go back with a lawyer that cost me about $2,500 in legal fees, and was able to go back with the lawyer and say, you guys misrepresented this property. You have to play a part. And so they let us out of the deal, but it did cost us. My mate and I went halves in the, and it almost nearly cost a great friendship.
How much would it have cost not doing that? Like actually going through with it?
In retrospect, COVID occurred and we should have bought that deal, and we'd have made $130,000 just on selling the property. But we didn't know that at the time. The fact is, we made an offer of $490, and if it was not developable, it was worth $430. So to have lost $10,000 and some legal fees and save a friendship was a small price to pay. But I should have followed my gut. My gut told me I was right, and I should have kept to my gut.
How do you think about planning for these? Like, how do you think about planning for the future, or property planning yourself?
So,
is that something you think about?
Yeah, for me, it's a business plan. I've always treated it like a business. It's not my money. It goes into a separate account. It stays there. Everything pays for itself. If I use money from it, I pay it back. If I lend it money, I take it back. It's a business. It's not my money. I don't treat it in any way, shape, or form like my money. Actually,
I actually heard a really good I don't know, it was a quote, but I heard a really good thing where he's like, you need to the second, I don't know if I can't remember the correct wording, but it's like the second order consequences, that money, the dividend is your money. That initial money is not yours. So like what you're saying is buying this property, and then that's not your money. You can't sell it and get the equity. It's only after you sell it, get the equity, move that into another deal, and then that's a cash flow positive deal, or that's a $100,000 gain. That's when you can touch the money. So you can't touch that first sale. It's only that second sale that you can then touch the money. That
and even then, I only use that money for more deals. It's a deal. Like it's real life Monopoly for me. Like the fact is that money buys hot water services, it buys new blinds, and each financial year, when you're coming close to an end of a financial year, you sit there and you look at how much money you've got, how much you're likely to pay in tax, who are my good tenants, who asked for a dishwasher, they can have it, who asked for this, they can have it. Buy that, fix that, get that, or pull some equity out and go another deal. Like, it's not my money.
When does it ever end then, though? Like, what's the kind of end game?
55,
is there an end game?
7 years from now. So the goal ultimately for me, by 65, I'd like to own 8 outright. So if I could sell everything off and be left with 8, 4 would be good. Like, to me, 4 means I'm living comfortably. But if you own 8 properties outright by your 65th birthday, you've got a pretty good life. You're going overseas 3 or 4 times a year. You've got a friend on the side that has expensive taste that you can afford to entertain.
How do you? So you used to be one thing most people don't know about Jason is he used to be a commercial real estate agent where you would sell commercial. So how does commercial come into your strategy? Like, do you think about like you told me 8? You just said 8 properties then, so that's 8 residential properties, or like how? What, do you see value in commercial,
So,
or what do you think about that?
great question. I think ultimately I'd like to get to the stage where I've done commercial. What I love about commercial is there's no emotion involved, right? It's just numbers, and some of my favorite deals I've ever done were over the telephone with people or walking along the beach on the Sunshine Coast, just going, "Hey, I was thinking of you. You should buy this house, this property I just listed." Because it's just an app, because people have appetite for retail, industrial, etc. But the thing with commercial is the commercial is a great way to end the game. But to me, and we go back to that starting off with some kind of grant, anyone can get in with residential. You can still get into the residential space with 3% deposit. Commercial's 30-40% deposit. You've got to be cashed up in order to do commercial. And the problem now is once you get your portfolio, it's a big game of it's a big game of Jenga. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's too hard to pull it all out because then all just flop. So you've either got to sell and start again. And I'm too old. Like, I want to do it, but I just haven't got there yet. I'd love to. The goal for me, our family have just sold our commercial office space because the super fund owned it, and we're going to move my mum out of it and move my brother into it, and then buy a little shopping centre, and then be our own tenant. That'll be my first foray into something significant in the commercial space, which I hope to do within the next 2 years.
That'd be exciting.
Oh, super interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
you're on it.
Before we go on to the selling side of things, because we're already at 50 minutes, and I did promise 2 hours. So, but Joe said an hour and a half. Are there any sort of things that we haven't covered in the buying golden rules? What should we consider?
Okay, so we did pretty good, to be perfectly honest. But what we do, remember, everyone talks about how to do your research. Well, if you think about it, Macca's and Bunnings did the research for you. Don't waste your time or your money. If there's a Macca's or a Bunnings, buy. Simple as that.
Somebody do the data on that. If I'd love to see somebody from the community.
Yeah, I have a Bunnings theory, but I haven't been able to answer it.
How does an area perform after Macca's and Bunnings come into it?
Well, the commercial reality is a Bunnings and a Macca's go into an area because of why? Supply and demand. They're not going to go there unless there's people living there. And you don't want to go there if there's no one that wants to rent your property. So if there's enough population for a Macca's to be there, there's enough population for someone to rent your house. Again, going back to my point about buy what you can afford. It doesn't need to be capital growth. If you use time as your friend, then buying a property that will always be occupied has to play a factor. And if there's a McDonald's or a Bunnings, it'll always be occupied. And
I haven't got a bonus I could throw on top of that. We've recently got a Guzman and Gomez just down the road, Guzman Y Gomez or whatever, and a KFC. So, and a Macca's just moved in as well. So I think the area I live in's already, there's a Bunnings just down the road. So
we got a question here. We got plus Woolies and Coles or both. If you've got a Woolies, Coles, Bunnings, and Macca's, you're set.
What about Guzman and Gomez, Joe? Was it Guzman and Gomez or Y Gomez?
Well, but they're using this. Guzman and Gomez have used the same theory I've used, which is Macca's went there, so I'll follow them.
Yeah.
They didn't do any research.
Okay, I'm excited to get. I've got on my other screen here. I've got
one last thing, which is get good insurance, guys. And we can cover that again in property management. The number of people, whether they're friends, clients, etc., do not buy. Again, I'll watch where I go with my financial advice, but with landlord protection insurance, it's $70-$80 a year more. Buy a landlord protection policy. You don't need it till you need it. Simple as that.
What else? Yeah. What are some of the horror stories that you've seen? Because I feel like this is kind of experience. I had a horror story, for instance, where I had terrible insurance. I just got the one that someone said, "Hey, get this one because it's cheap," and I incentivized the wrong tenant. I said, "Hey, I'll give you 2 weeks free if you come to my property," and they did. And then I had a terrible property manager, and then after 6 months, there was holes in the wall. There was poop on the wall from dogs and kids, and the dogs, which weren't allowed in the property, scratched up the floor. So we had $12,000 worth of internal damage, and all it had was flooring and walls. Like, how can you do $12,000 worth of damage? And I had to pay. I had to pay all of it. Like, I think I got five. I don't even think I got it. I think it was 12 grand I had to pay. I'm pretty sure. No, I got their bond. That's right. I got a $1,200 or $1,400 bond, and that was it.
So what's the horror story?
I didn't have the right insurance.
The worst thing I've ever seen in my life, and it was fairly early on in my career. I just took over a management for a mate who was a real estate agent from a very reputable company. And we took over the management, and because he suspected they'd done a runner, so I rock up, I get the keys, I turn the key, and the door won't open. I'm like, oh. So I'm like, we better body weight it. So I used my body weight, and then my mate Patrick used his body weight, and we opened the door, and I kid you not, it was knee deep in rubbish the entire way through the house and the entire way in the rear yard. Wow. 4 skips to remove the rubbish, and $40,000 cleanup, like absurd.
Wow.
Luckily, they had good insurance, but we see all the time where landlords are underinsured because of a fire, or they have a landlord protection policy, but it doesn't have a contents component to it, and owners don't understand that contents such as your hot water service, your air conditioning unit, they're not covered by your building insurance. So even if a property is vacant, it doesn't even have to be a bad tenant. We don't have lots of bad tenants anymore, to be honest. But it doesn't have to be a bad tenant. We've got a mutual client right now, Joe, where the house has just been sitting empty because we've been doing a subdivision, and it's been robbed blind of copper piping, hot water service. They got up for shits and giggles and pulled tiles off the roof in the middle of winter in Adelaide, and it's damaged the ceiling. Like, it's still 30 grand's worth of damage that fortunately is insured with a good insurer. But I can't stress enough.
And actually, probably the best. Sorry, I was just going to say probably the best way to look at that, I'd suggest, is the product disclosure statement, or what's the best way to understand?
Yeah, how do you identify the best policy?
Yeah. It's got to have really good rent arrears cover and really good rent protection for if it's left empty. Yep. It's got to have a reasonably low excess. It's got to have no excess on rent cover. Like, you shouldn't have to pay excess on a rent cover. You should only pay excess on alternative claims. Okay. And it should have $50,000 to $60,000 of contents cover, and it should have an adequate pet damage policy.
But how do you know if those things are good? Like, how do you know that? Like, when I look at a policy, I'm like, God, there's too many words here. But how do I know that, like, one's better than the other?
Well, it's not a case of one's better than the other. One policy doesn't have them, and one does.
Okay. So they're just not on they're not on the list of things. No, we don't cover for this. No, we don't cover for this. Yes, we do up to $60,000, or yes, we do up to $12,000.
Or yes, we do have contents cover, but it's a $2,000 excess.
Yeah. So here's a good question that's actually come up. A good broker, and they're talking about insurance broker, I imagine. Do you go direct to Terry Shear, Shaw, those type of people, or do you have an insurance broker? Like, what is your preference?
In my business, I've got an insurance broker, but for landlord protection, I'm as a landlord, I look at EBM is a good landlord policy. MGA, which is insurance brokers, is a good landlord policy. PIP is a good landlord policy. However, you've got to read the fine print because they've increased their flood zone section. Terry Shear, of course, is a good landlord policy. What I'm saying is don't go to the big four banks. Don't necessarily go to some of the other large insurers that don't specialize in landlord protection. You can do it by all means for the building policy, that's different, but not for the landlord policy.
Yeah, okay. Well, I want to go through, you've got way too many golden tips. We've got way too many golden tips. So let's go through, what are your top 3 golden tips? So we've got golden tips on renovation, selling, and developing, and finding a property manager. So what are your favorite and top 3 tips for those subjects? So let's talk renovation, selling, developing. Hit whichever one you like the most.
All right. Well, let's start with selling, only because the obvious opposite to buying is selling. Let's start by saying I don't like to sell, but I've started doing it more because developing and creating cash flow through developing ultimately means you have to sell in order to go to the next deal.
Yep.
Know at the time of the purchase what the end plan is. So don't buy it with the intent of buying it to sell, or buy it with the intent of renting it out, and know which one it is so that you do or don't over capitalize.
It's a great point.
At selling at this moment in time, I'm sorry, but if you are not spending $3,000 to $4,000 on top end styling so that people can imagine living there, then you deserve, like, you'll see, in terms of getting people to fight for the deal, you have to have it styled. And if you're going to spend the money on the styling, then make it look good to begin with. Make sure the carpets are professionally steam cleaned or covered by rugs or new carpet. Freshly paint if you can, or at least touch up, get rid of all the chips. When they're looking for 5 minutes, so they're not looking hard. So just make sure that all the obvious things are fixed. If there's a broken handle, fix it. Put fresh bark in the lawn. Make sure the grass is green. If there's dead plants, pull them out. Go to Bunnings and spend $200 on new conifers. It's not break the bank stuff in order to make, what my favorite agent, as you know, you can smell his product from a mile away because like you can just go, this is a Scotty special because there's fresh plants, nice, clean, it's freshly painted. So spend the money. Also his tip, which is price it low and watch it go. Price it high, you'll watch it die. So your job,
price it high, watch it die. That's it's true. It's very true. I mean,
I've seen a few of those recently. Like just sort of, I don't know, it's greedy vendors or sort of, they just sort of, and it just sits there in a market where I think everything's selling within a couple of days or a couple of hours. Yeah.
We still have tons of competition. We're still at that moment in time where 30, 40, 50 people are going through. So present it beautifully, price it correctly, and then have 3 or 4 people fight over it. Because they're all going there. They know, the person that buys it knows that they're buying outside the range. Simple as that.
Especially in Adelaide.
Price
in Adelaide. If you look at South Australia, just know you're going to pay $40,000, $50,000 more than the listed price. It is just the way
you're going to pay 8 to 10% above the top end of the range. Perfectly legal, by the way.
Well, I mean, most of them aren't 10%. They just go silly, but know the value.
And then, of course, understand who your buyer is and present like, if it's a 2-bedroom unit, don't put toys and swing sets as part of your styling. Put a main bedroom and a home office. If it's a 4-bedroom house, don't pitch it to a bachelor. Like, know who your
Okay.
buyer is.
Yeah, that's solid. Those are solid selling tips. What about renovating? What are some of our
Can we just hit on one last one, Joe? I'm going to stop you there. Which Jason, because I see people do this, and he said, don't hang on for a few grand. So I have a bit of a story, a bit of an anecdote here. And look, mine wasn't a few grand. Mine was actually 10 grand. And we're not talking like $1 million property here, which it would have only been 1%. But like I made the mistake of deciding to sell after signing up another 12-month lease. And we've seen enough of these deals now, Joe, that we know that so I had an owner occupier wanted to move in and they were willing to pay $10,000 more. But they wanted to move in. So I'm like, I tried to entice the tenant to move out. They didn't buy it. So that didn't happen. So I said, okay, I've got another offer. It's $10,000 less. So it is an investor. So yeah. So I could hold on and hope that another investor was going to pay more, or I could just decide that this was the best offer that I was going to get on this property.
Yeah,
so
that is one of my one of my golden tips is try and find properties that have tenants in place. The agent is looking at the market, and the market is made up of 70% owner occupiers and 30% investors. As soon as there is a long lease on a property, especially if that lease is under market, you have the opportunity to get a really, really good price because that agent has kicked out 70% of the market. And vendors people who are selling their houses do exactly what Jeff is talking about here. They list their property for sale and they don't even think like, oh yeah, I'm going to want to get a new lease on it because I'm going to sell it to an investor. But no, you're going to sell it to an owner occupier. It's just the way it's going to go. But they get this new lease on and it screws them out of $20,000, $30,000. So a lot of the deals that I see, there's so much opportunity in having something with a lease on it. So if you're trying to sell it, don't renew the lease. But if you're trying to buy it, look out for it because you can make $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Like it's so easy, and they're cracking properties. And you keep the tenant on, suffer, and also $100 a week, right? Let's say if your property is $100 a week under market rent, that's massive. Like that's taking it from a 4.2% yield to a 5.6% yield, right? That's in realistic terms, $5,200 a year. So if you can get anything above that, if you can get a $10,000 discount, you've just made $5,000. If you can get a $15,000, you've made $10,000.
Correct.
So you can take advantage of that opportunity, but you tell the agent, not in cash terms, you tell the agent in a yield perspective, look, this is a 4.2% yield. The market is at 5.6. What are you going to do about that? I'm not going to pay $475. I'm going to pay $455.
Well, you probably also want to tell them that you do like their property. You're not just trying to, because otherwise, if you make them feel bad, you really want to,
No, you don't make them bad, but it's just like, sorry, I can't. Oh, look, I'm really struggling to make this stack up from a numbers perspective. The yield is so low. You have to give me a discount, and the agent understands because she's like, I can't sell it to an owner occupier. It has to go to an investor, and there's just not that many investors out there. A lot in this group,
and there's plenty, and there's plenty that can't take the $100 a week hit. So even though there's a 30% investor market, you're actually in a pool of about 15 people that can withstand the 5K hit. Particularly if you're buying variable and you're gonna lose another 30 or 40 on top of your 100 with the interest rate rise.
Yeah. Very true. Okay, let's knock through some. Let's rapid fire. Thank you, Jason, for sharing your wealth of knowledge. Absolutely.
Drop that in there.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're only sort of a bit of like.
You didn't have to do that, boys.
Well, you didn't have to come on the show, but
I'm conscious of the fact that we've got a few tips to get through. Plus, I want to share some real live deals. So let's
rapid fire. Renovation. What are your top renovation tips?
Number one. Are you renting it or selling it? And same as before. What's the value add? You know, Joe, that you and I, that's how we became mates rather than colleagues, is because we could talk for the rest of our life about value add. And you've called me time and time again about deals not in my state, because I have this ability. If you want to learn something tonight, my number one tip, and I'm going to show you guys in real life in a second, look at a floor plan, learn how to read a floor plan, understand a floor plan, and immediately work out how you can value add it, because we've turned a
how can we do that,
3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house into a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a study, which got, like I said to Joe before, I predicted rent at 580 and we got 660 for it, and 30 grand for the reno. So learn how to read a floor plan and learn how to value add. Use a team of trusted tradespeople, pay them what they're worth, and pay them on time.
Yes.
It's rocket science, right? Not. Like, just find the people you know and trust. And Ross and I have got some cool people, and we've met some cowboys as well. And, you know, but
yeah.
Like,
but it's your property manager has a lot of connections. This is what they do day in and day out. So it's definitely not you having to have those connections yourself as an individual property investor. It's leveraging your team. Your buyer's agent will have connections. Your property manager will have connections. Your project manager will have, your broker will know some people. Like, there's a lot of people that you can get access to. What's the next one?
Learn where to skimp and where to spend. My favorite tip internally is, as an example, you should paint internally and externally. And we've done a live video at one of my projects, Joe, in the past. Pay a professional to paint inside, do the outside yourself, as an example. Because outside, you miss a spot, no one looks and goes, oh, you missed a spot on the gutter. You walk into a shit paint job inside a house, and that's the first and last thing you see. You just walk in every time going, and it's the easiest way for me to negotiate 12 grand off the price, because I'm like, they've done it looks like they got smashed and had all their friends around here and painted the joint. It's going to cost me 12 grand to fix their paint job. Yeah. Like, so just pay the professional to paint is my...
painting sucks anyway.
Yeah.
It's the worst job ever.
Whereas outside, it's fun. You jump on a thing, you're just painting away, singing along.
What are some more skimping? Where do you skimp? Where do you not skimp? What are some other non-skimping areas that you look at?
Okay. If you're running out of money, don't put any blinds. Pull the curtains off, leave the windows free, because anyone can whip down to Bunnings after the fact and put blinds on themselves. No one notices at an open home that there's no blinds. So don't pay. If you can't, make it your last decision. If you've got 2 grand left, put blinds, but don't buy them to the last second.
Good. Solid, that one.
If you've got dated built-in robes, just cover the doors. Like, put new doors on, but leave all the existing inserts. Otherwise I like to skimp. If you're running out of money and the tiles are good in the bathroom, then don't do the bathroom. Do new tapware, new shower screen, new vanity, new towel hardware. You can have a bathroom looking pretty schmick for 2K if you're on a budget. Whereas the kitchen is fairly important. Do as good a job in the kitchen as you can afford to do, because it's the heart of the home and it's where people notice. My favorite thing to do, and Ross hates my guts for it, but pull a wall down. I love to pull walls down and open up. The easiest way to add, now pulling a wall down will cost somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 to open up those 70 styled houses, but it's immediate wow factor. It's pull the wall down and make it an open plan lounge room, dining room and kitchen, because that's the world we live in today. And you do that, you will get your money back, I promise you.
Okay. That is a solid renovation. And
last tip.
Oh, Jesus.
Write your budget and add 10%.
Yeah, I read that and I thought...
Your budget is not 10% of the purchase. It's 10% of your buffers.
Write your budget and add 10% for disasters.
Yeah. Is 10% enough? Because I often thought...
No, 10% is almost always enough.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yep.
I want to touch on some of our case studies that we've got a number of case studies here. However, you've dangled the carrot for developing. So what are your number one developing top tips?
Okay, so keep in mind you've got to check your rules in your state, because these are specific to South Australia. I like to develop in South Australia. If you're tearing down and going 1:2 or 1:3, 600 square meters minimum. At this moment in time, there's no money in 1:2. So unless you're buying it for the purpose of long-term land banking and some cash flow, don't do
I'd
it.
almost say I wouldn't say that's universally across Australia, but in a lot of the parts, it's too hard, because by the time the build costs and the land value is,
The only
very hard.
exception I'll say to that is if you can buy a block of land, and I helped a client buy one in Hallett Cove recently, where
A block of land.
well, he bought a house on 600 square meters that will do 1:2, but he's on the top of a hill, and when he builds two-story houses, he's going to have ocean views from the lounge room. There are exceptions to the rule, but they are exceptions to the rule.
Definitely.
Try your best to keep it a 1:3. Know your minimum requirements for your favorite council areas off by heart. You should know them off by heart. Pick 1, 2, 3 council areas and only negotiate with them, because then they'll get to know you and you'll get to know them. And with Ross and I now, it's rarely no. It's almost always,
you have to.
Have you considered this? Would you do this instead? Like, because they trust us. They know we're good for the money. They know we do good projects. So once you've got strikes on the board, councils want to work with you and for you. They're not the bastards everyone thinks they are once you've got strikes on the board. If you want a hammerhead, you need a minimum of 750 square meters. You're ideally looking for a house with a flat roof carport, because that can be torn down. You need 5 meters from the edge of the house to the fence line, which is 1 meter for our new fence line from the house, 4 meters for the driveway, which is 3 for the drive, and 50 centimeters each side for a garden bed.
And when we say hammerhead, for those who, I mean, I'm sure most people would know, but that's one where you're retaining the existing and keeping building out the back.
Yep. Shaped like a hammer.
and the way South Australia set those rules up is hammerhead battle axe is very, very rare in South Australia. Like, it is very hard to find those type of deals. So the reason they set it up at 5 meters. The reason they set it up with 5 meters is because 5 meters doesn't really exist. So don't expect to go out there and find them. However, if you can find that 5 meter variance,
find them, you're probably fighting with me as the buyer.
Call me. Tell me about it, because every single one I've found, I've purchased. So they are golden. Because the opportunity lies there is everyone they don't think that they exist anymore, so they don't even bother looking at the 5 meters. And then when you find it, it's like, oh my gosh, we've got 5 meters. Oh, this is now worth an extra $60,000 to me, but I can still, pay the same amount as I normally would. So anyway, go on. Sorry, I've messed the flow up.
Not to rattle again about insurance, but during a development, prepare and insure for the likelihood of being robbed. So
yes,
during a development, the commercial reality is you're going to be robbed during that project. You should be insured for it. If you're really lucky, they'll take your 30-year-old hot water service and you'll get a brand new one.
It's a blessing in disguise.
And then my last tip for developing is find people with complementary skill sets and do joint ventures with them. So that's how Ross and I started doing stuff together, is because I love to renovate and he loves land, and I like to hold and he likes to sell. And now we do stuff together and you're bringing two sets of skills together, and you're bringing 2 sets of cash together, and it sometimes means I put in more cash than him, and sometimes it means he puts more cash than me, etc. But it means that you can negotiate in cash terms rather than having to borrow money. Borrowing money for a development deal complicates the deal, in my opinion, but Ross and I will fight about that till the day we die. I like
borrowing
doing
from a lender.
I like to develop with cash. I don't like to borrow money.
I'm
Yeah,
on
I mean,
Ross's side
having
with that. You just
having done a project or two, like it really does.
It's just
because
easier.
Well,
But
yeah,
like you need cash if you're going to build in the back. But you know, you just in an ideal world, you've between two mates. Most of us doing this have probably got $500,000 floating around together. So just do it together. Just pay your cash. You're in and out in 6 months. It just is less complicated.
you're probably
But
saving
we'll fight
depending
about
on
it.
depending on what kind of loan you're able to get, because the problem is the moment you sort of start talking you're going to knock a property down or do anything, the major lenders don't like it unless you're borrowing 3 million plus, because it's just not commercially viable for them to have a loan discharged in 6, 12, 18 months, whatever it is. So you then have to start going to your sort of commercial lenders that are just more, they'll charge you sort of 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, 15%. And then you sort of start needing your profit. I'm
just saying, don't be afraid to ask a mate if they want to do a deal with you, because you might be thinking about it. And the other tip to begin with, like the very first deal Ross and I ever did, we paid a lawyer for a joint venture, and we'd been mates 10 years. Do you know what I mean? It's $1,500 to do a joint venture contract. So we did the joint venture contract. The second time we were a little bit dodgy, if my lawyer's listening, sorry, Bruno. And we just duplicated his contract and changed a few things. But now we're making money. Why are we going to rip each other off? We don't need that. That's a piece of paper. We've torn it up. It's thrown in the bin because now there's too much money at stake. I'm not risking that for
friendship,
$5,000.
which is going
that's right.
Going to mess up everything. But it all starts with baby steps, right? Like you don't start here, but you can get in with people that know what they're talking about, and people will take a shot with you. You know, you say, hey, I've got a little bit of money. I can negotiate the deal really well. Like you need, like for a joint venture to work or a deal to work, you need someone who knows how to buy the deal really well. You need to know someone who can run the deal and who's got the cash and who's got the borrowing capacity. That's all the 4 partners that you need. And if you
depends on whether you're doing a deal with Jason or Ross, though.
And or if you've got a mate who's a tradie in this, I've always said in Australia today, our new round of multi-millionaires are going to be self-employed tradespeople. If you've got a mate that's got a brain on his shoulders, that's got because most sparkies can do some basic plumbing and most tradies, whilst they're good at that trade, they can do the other trades pretty good. They're a good joint venture partner to have. You know, so they might not have as much cash as you, but they've got a skill set. Get them on board. And they're going to prioritize your job over... They're going to prioritize because they get paid on the way out. They're going to prioritize it.
Yeah. And
we'll
also map out and get clear on who's responsible for what. If excess cash is needed, who's paying for that kind of stuff, and what does all that look like? But anyway,
create a business plan. Okay, let's talk about these deals.
Well,
should we go to our sponsor, Joe?
Yes, that's what we need to do. We need to do the sponsor thing. So I just wanted to say that we're going to now jump in. We've got a number of real life case studies that actually talk about numbers and what they look like before and after. So I'm excited to jump into that. We're probably not going to. We may get to all of them. We may not if people see value in that.
I'll through them quickly, and then maybe if people want to reach out to you, Joe, for more details on a particular deal, then we can do that later.
Let's do it. Okay, well, we're going to jump.
Some chocolate.
Sponsor am I going to? I forgot.
Scotty, mate. Shit.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
Get buyer ready, get educated.
You have to add everybody again. Looks like. So I was going to say, if people are loving this session, like drop a comment. Like what are your golden rules as well, people? Like there's nearly 50 people at the moment watching this live stream. So let us know what you're loving and what you'd like to see.
Well, what questions have you got? I mean, we talked about the topics of developing, renovating, selling, buying, subdividing, and dealing with a property manager. Like Jason is one of my go-tos for random stuff. Just think about anything, and I'm like, how would I like to think of? What would Jason? I don't know if you got. I like to think about things because we all get problems in life, and there's challenges, and I have different people for where. If I was X, what would I do? If I was, how would they handle this situation? And it's interesting how you can kind of solve your own problems by thinking about, hey, if I was, Jason, how would I solve this property management issue? How would I solve this developing issue? So I don't know. That's how I think about the world. But okay, Jason, let's do it. We have some interesting things here. You've made these beautiful presentations.
Cool.
What do we got?
So this is a post-war house in Elizabeth Park. It's on Yorktown Road, which is a main road. I think we paid $134,000 for this one, but a little while ago. So what we did is, this is a great example of where we didn't overcommit financially. So we put in a new kitchen, we pulled out the carpet, we polished the floorboards, fresh paint. Split system air conditioner, which you can see on the top of the roof. In the bathroom, we just left the bathroom but put new shower screen, new vanity, new towel rails. I think we spent about $13,500. Next slide.
Ooh,
that's what it looked like.
That's
this
what
one
was
was
before. Beauty.
Yeah.
True beauty. So when was this? 2014. Was this cheap back then?
It was cheap. It wasn't very cheap, but it was cheap. Something like this renovated would have been about $175. So we got it 40 grand below market and spent 13 grand on it. So an absolute bargain. Yep. Next slide.
Well, it's 10%, Joe. 10% of the property's value.
Look at it. Jesus. Look at the roof is done. The flooring's done. There was a fire at some stage.
There was a fire in the kitchen. So same house. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
17 grand, sorry, not 13.
Unreal.
It's currently worth about 400 grand. And we currently get 365 a week. Time is your friend. This is the reason this one is here is because time is your friend.
Right. So $365 times by 52 divided by your purchase price of 131,000. That's a 14% yield on your money. Not bad.
Well, the crazy thing is just seeing properties you can buy for, or could have bought back then for hundreds of thousands, like 100,000. That's crazy.
So this is one of Ross's deals. I obviously handled the property management and a couple other things.
Sign.
But
in the window.
But Ross bought a house that was really dodgy neighbours, I have to tell you, in O'Sullivan Beach. This is, again, a dated deal, but go to the next slide for me so that I can just look at the numbers. He bought the house in 2017 for $225,000. It was a 900-metre block. He did what's called row houses, which is 3 side-by-sides, but you need 18.2 metres in order to do that. Yeah, that's the floor plans, Joe. So fairly small. The division and build at the time cost him about 800 grand all up, but in today's terms, that deal's worth about 1.8 million. And the current rent on those, he's now sold that deal on to other people, but we still manage them at $525 a week each.
I just saw this comment.
Again,
I just saw this. Oh, okay, sorry. Just this comment. The before on these renovations is what we call a nightclub hottie.
I don't even. Oh, geez. I don't know. Do I want to know what that
ruined this deal for you? But sorry. But
hey, goggles.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so $1.8 million is bloody unreal, and $1,600 a week rent
on 800 grand.
But he sold.
But again, yeah. But still, time is your friend.
Yeah.
Again, that's 10% yield. If you retain them at 810 grand, that's a 10% yield.
That's probably not. Is that factoring in the purchase price as well? Because the 810 plus.
It is.
Oh, so wow. Okay.
Including purchase. Wow, unreal. Okay. Oh,
so this is my favorite deal. We talked about my favorite deal of all time. This is the first one Ross and I did together. We learned a bit on this one because we had a bit of an issue with the concrete with SA Water. We put the concrete down, and then SA Water changed their mind about the location of the water meter, so we had to pull some of the concrete up. But we learned a lot, and this was the first deal we did together. We bought the house for $322,000. In 2020, we sold the block for $185,000, and that one currently gets $520 a week in rent.
Yeah.
The front house or the back? No, obviously.
The front house gets $520 a week.
Wow. 100. So can
and
you talk
again,
to
look
me?
at this to the left picture. And that's my furniture, would you believe? We used to, because I had moved back from the Sunshine Coast, so my furniture was in storage. So because I was too stingy to pay styling. Yeah, because I was too stingy to pay styling, I'd just rent a budget truck, and my mate Tommy and I would move the furniture into the house for the 4 weeks and then move it out, put it back in storage.
You'd be your own little. I mean, that saves $4,000 a pop each time.
That wall has come down. You can see what I mean. Like how amazing that looks, like a brand new home. That's a 40-year-old house.
Yeah, wall here.
Oh yeah. I see. Yeah. Gee.
And you can you talk to us about, because oh great, we sold the block for 185. We purchased it for whatever. Can you talk about
320
how this whole battle axe thing works, and why is this such a interesting strategy? Like, can you break it down? Because I feel like it's easy to skip over these type of things, but can you go into a bit of detail about
the biggest advantage of this sort of deal is that when the mistake people make is assume that the house has got to come down, right? And, let's look at the house next to it, which is owned by the loveliest neighbours I ever met. And this house only got robbed once because he was this nosy old guy who I befriended. And Ross would be like, you're so friendly. I'm like, of course, he's going to call me at 3 a.m. when we're getting robbed. I want him. I'm happy to be nice to him. But what's really cool is a house is savable. The minute you pull the house down, you're pulling down 100, like even a shitty old house still has value. So why would you pull it down unnecessarily? I don't understand. you should absolutely do everything you can to save the house if you can save it, because it's a free asset.
Yeah, that's right. And to me, it's almost probably not as lucrative as what they used to have up in Queensland, those splitter blocks, where you could literally just two properties on one title, where you could automatically just sign a piece of paper. It's almost as lucrative as that, but not quite.
So how do the numbers work? Let's actually
Sure.
go to let's go to
So the numbers on this, because I haven't really included any numbers, I've just shown real deals. But to do a hammerhead block and a reno is somewhere in and around $60,000. Even with a subdivision, it's give or take $5,000 on 60,000, because your SA water is somewhere in the vicinity of 20, 22, 23. Okay. Then in this one, we obviously extensively renovated it inside. You've got some town planning costs, which are around the 3,000 to 4,000. You've got some legals and some additional conveyancing, which is somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. Then Ross obviously is the guy I use. Fortunately, when we do deals together, he doesn't charge me, but you should account $5,000 to $10,000 for his fee. Usually, you want someone like a Ross or someone like that in your corner. They do all your liaising on your behalf, because toing and froing with this sort of stuff is
too much.
Relatively hard.
It's too much for you.
Like it's correct. If you've got a job and you'd like to keep your job, when you're dealing with council and they want something, they don't mean tomorrow. They don't mean by 5 o'clock. They mean we've sent the email. We want it now. But we want it now.
Yeah.
So paying someone to deliver now is important.
Yeah, and these people exist, like they're called project managers. And the way I like to think about it is it's like a buyer's agent, right? A buyer's agent is there to find, negotiate, and secure. And if you can work with a buyer's agent that knows how to do developments, you can then hand off to a developer who is doing the development stuff. So it's just as hands off as it is like using a buyer's agent, but from a development perspective. I feel like we need like a new thing called like a development agent, and it would, spark people to get involved with some of these smaller projects.
And if you're starting out, honestly, whilst you go, it's 10 grand to pay a project manager to manage the project manager has managed 20, 30, 100, 200, 300 deals. So he's made the mistakes. So the 10 grand you're going to pay him, I guarantee you're going to pay that 10 grand by making mistakes anyway. So just pay the guy. Goes back to my pay good people to do a job and pay them what they're worth.
Yeah, I agree. So you, how much did you buy this one for?
320, and we sold 320, and we sold the land for 185.
It's unreal. 185. Wow. Okay. I like it.
Pre-COVID. This is a pre-COVID deal. So I put this here. I'm like, but Jason, those deals are so old. The market's changed.
These deals don't exist anymore, Jason.
No, they don't. Yeah. So these ones I want to share are mainly some renovation deals or some value add deals, but these are real live deals of mutual clients of yours and mine, Joe and Jeff, that we've done this year. These are real deals. Hey?
God, you've only used our clients.
Well,
sorry, Jeff. This is Jeff is wincing in pain right now.
Sorry. That wasn't intentional.
Oh, okay. Good.
Okay.
Okay. So what have we got here,
Christie's Beach.
You can't give away the locations, Jason. We can't tell them.
Oops.
Well, it's somewhere in Adelaide, Joe. I mean, it's
somewhere in Adelaide. Southern suburbs of Adelaide. Although Christie's is getting very unaffordable, which is why we were buying there in the first place.
Which is why this was a steal in November of last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was severely under rented, and the tenants in there were very cluttery, like major hoarders. So, and again, going back to what you talked about before, Joe, in negotiating, these are the kinds of deals you want to buy as an investor, because an agent could not have taken this to market. Simple as that.
No, not at all. It was.
Yeah.
These are very, very nice photos of what we had in here. I was very concerned. We did the walkthrough video, and I was very concerned with, there was like motorbikes and parts. There were
three lounge suites under the carport at the front of the house. Like, it was
in here. It's just
yeah.
3 lounge suites.
And do you know what's really amazing about this deal? I had mentally prepared the client for the fact that their exit was going to be a shit show. I've never had a cleaner house handed back by a hoarder in my life. He could have blown me over with a feather when I went into that property. Now, this was a very hands-on landlord. They came over. So once the tenant moved out, they came over because the husband's really handy, and so they camped in the house for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We polished the floorboards, fresh paint, just major repairs throughout because there were plumbing issues and all that sort of thing. I think, just go to the next slide, Joe. I think they spent about 23 grand.
Very hands-on. 2-week turnaround. Yeah, 23,200. So this, I think the point, I mean, the renovation looks bloody unreal. The point that you're making here is that it's 23 grand, but if you were doing it yourself, it would probably be that 30, 40 grand.
35.
Yeah, pretty much a full reno.
But again,
look at the flooring. It's unreal.
They still paid the professional painter. They still paid for carpet, and they still paid to have the floors polished professionally. They knew where to skimp because he was handy. He put the vanity in himself. He changed the tapware himself. He did the things he could do, but he paid the professionals where it counted. It's a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Keep in mind that they were getting $385 a week. We now get $580. It's now worth $620.
It's now worth $620, is it? I'll try and find it. So that's $85,000 worth of instant equity. Well, not instant. It's sweat equity, right? It's earned equity. But that's $85,000 worth of difference. And if it's
we're not at the 1 year mark. Keep in mind, we're not at a year.
Yeah, that is. But this is what happens. The point I think you're making in all of these is you're buying a problem. Look at, none of these are beautiful, perfect, beautiful things, but you're creating the beautiful, perfect, lovely things. So you're finding a problem and creating a solution that someone else is willing to pay for.
With that said,
sorry.
With that said, I've made plenty of money buying properties that, you can, if what you've got and what you want to do is buy a single fronted villa in a suburb where you'll always get a tenant in a medium socioeconomic, because that's what you can afford, and you let time be your friend, you'll still achieve something, but you need time. We've sped the clock up in these deals. Time will still be your friend, but in these instances, like you say, we've added value by speeding up the clock because we bought someone's headache.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Oh, here we go. What have we got here?
This is the one. So this is exciting, this deal. So this is a southern suburbs. The client in question didn't want me to disclose the exact details. So high 500s. He was happy to share because he also thinks it's a cool deal. So in the photo on the left, you can see that room to the left where the lounge suite is. So, sorry, to the right, buddy. Yep. Okay. So we're going to turn that into a 4th bedroom and a study. Next slide.
I'm down. We're going crazy here.
Let's
pose the question. Actually, let's pose the question to the audience.
So let's just look at this. You go 3-bedroom. You called me up and you're like, what can we do here? And I'm like, because you were the one who had the idea of the second bathroom. And then but you were going to move the bathroom and do all sorts. And I'm like, no, mate.
No,
it's
actually,
staring you in the face. It's a walk-in road.
No, well, this is the conversation I had with you, Jace. Is I was looking at this, and I know we can turn it into a 4-bed, 2-bath. Currently, it's a 3-bed, 1-bath. So you've got the 1 bath here. So what I wanted to do is turn this living room and dining room, because there's a family and meals here, and there's a living room here. You've got space, so that gives them that. So I wanted to cut this wall off here, and then make this a massive kind of bathroom. So for me, it didn't answer the question, because that is a massive space to be a bathroom. So that means a lot of tiles, and also the plumbing for the kitchen is not the same plumbing as the bathroom. So I was like, that's not the right answer, Jace. That's not that. I'm doing something wrong here. I need the oracle to help me out. So anyone in the comments, what would you do? How would you turn this thing that you've got in front of you? I'm going to get rid of me and get rid of everyone so you can see.
Don't show them the solution.
Slide.
Yeah, slide 16 is the solution. So don't see that.
How would you guys do it? Now, the fact is, it can be done. It has been done. It's in the process of getting done. But how would you make this happen? And this is a real deal that just happened.
Literally happening as we speak.
Oh, actually, it hasn't settled yet, has it? We're
Friday.
getting everything dead. Actually, that's another cool point. While we're waiting for people to throw in their comments below, is there is so much that you can get done while you're waiting up until unconditional and settlements, right? So like you can actually like get a extend out the settlement if you need to, but from unconditional to settlement, you should be planning and preparing your renovation. If you need to do any work, get that done beforehand. But no one's jumped in the comments of how they would do it. So I think somebody did. There was one person. Oh no, they said, "Are you still buying in Adelaide?" Yes. Yep. Yes. There's still
property to sale in Adelaide, I think.
There's still value there, though. Like there is still pockets. My sphere of Adelaide has shrunken. Like where there was more open, it has gotten a lot narrower for where I see value at the moment. So it has gotten a little bit tighter because the market has changed a little bit, and property prices have, like what I was talking about, Christie's Beach, right? That has gotten very unaffordable. So it's hit that threshold of, okay, if something comes under X price, I'll be willing to buy it, but I'm not seeing that happening. So it's kicked it out. So yeah. Thoughts on Mount Gambier? Why is it not? We're going to answer. Can you use the area for family and meals to add another bedroom?
You could, but let's look at the floor plan and look at what we've done. So go to the next slide. So what we did, we've turned the walk-in robe into an ensuite, and then we're going to add a built-in robe into the master bedroom. We've turned the lounge room into a large bedroom 4, and then we've turned the formal dining room that was a useless room into a study. We are installing a skylight in that room. So the family meals area will remain family meals.
Give me.
Sorry?
You're putting a skylight in the study?
Yes. Yep.
Great idea.
Because we don't want to waste money on a window, so we're just putting a skylight in. Because that room looks light and bright right now, but it's light and bright because
you got the front window.
Because you got that big front window. Go back to the original floor plan, Joe. You've got huge outdoor entertaining area over the other 2 living rooms. So we're just concerned that we'll lose natural light, and natural light's important in a study. So $400 for a skylight, put it in.
Yeah. $400, is that it? That's fantastic. So all of a sudden, and actually, I wish I could bring up we'll talk about the numbers soon, about what it actually means. But that's as easy as it is, right? Get the ensuite as close as you can to the original bathroom. Now, one thing to mention and to note is this ensuite looks incredibly small. Yeah, it looks really small. This walk-in robe, sorry, and this is not to scale. So whoever made this plan did not make it to scale because we had to measure the inside of this walk-in robe, and it's actually much larger than that. So
It's much
you
larger.
do have much larger. You have to think about that.
And you also have to keep in mind that whilst the ensuite seems small in today's terms, the ensuite, the era of this home, that sized ensuite is not unusual for that era of home, where you walk through the front door, there's a 900 by 900 shower cubicle to the left, a little tiny 2-door vanity in the center, and the toilet pan to the right. So it's pretty straightforward in the grand scheme of things. But it's functional. You've now got a 4-bedroom. We've rented this already at, like I said, at $660 a week, to a young family. They've just sold their family home, and it's a young couple with 4 kids. So it's perfect for them.
Right. So
now,
if we do the purchase price of, we're not talking about the purchase price, are we?
It's high fives. Let's just call it high fives.
Right. Okay.
So let's call it 585, 590 for the sake of
add the renovation. So 590 for the purchase price in total.
Yeah. And all up, I think we'll spend somewhere close to 28 to 30 on the reno.
So,
and the majority of that is the bathroom.
And then we get at 700,000 at 190. That gives us a 5.8% yield. But then it also gives us, and this is an interesting thing. It's about what is your actual strategy. So for this person, it was more of an equity harvest. So they were looking to capitalize on purchasing this at a very affordable rate, and then paying 590 minus 720. So they made $130,000 by spending $30,000 in renovation costs.
Which means go again.
Go again.
You're ready to go again.
Well, like to deposit back, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, Jeff? Have you got any?
Oh, the thing we didn't get to was property management golden rules, but that's we're already at an hour 50, so we should get to Q&A because otherwise we will be here beyond 2 hours. So
the only thing I'll say. One deal or yep. So the only thing I'll say that's really important for the people watching, and forget that I am a property manager, but if you're going to be hiring a property manager, the 2 or 3 things that property managers bang on about is we have a 0 tolerance for rent arrears. Well, question them. Well, what is that? What is your zero policy? What is your 0 tolerance for rent arrears policy? Everyone's got one. What's the policy? My policy is we live in an electronic world. We give you 24 hours grace. I'll give you benefit of the doubt that even though it was due today, and even though I told you should pay yesterday so that I get it today, I'll give you benefit of the doubt that you paid today and it'll hit tomorrow. But my generosity ends there. Then we send you a reminder on day 3. We call you on day 5. We call you, SMS you, and remind you on day 7. We harass you. Now, the law says I'm not allowed to, but I'm paid to get my rent paid by my owners, and 99.2% of my tenants pay on time so fine me. So what is there? Because everyone knows the most important part is you can't pay your mortgage if you don't get your rent paid. So go to your property manager and say, what is your 0 tolerance for rent arrears policy? What actually happens on the unlikely chance the tenant stops paying rent? Get them to describe how they manage dirty houses at routine inspections and what an ingoing and outgoing or exit and entry report looks like, and get them to tell them their definition of the difference between fair wear and tear and damage, so you understand those things. And then the really critical one for me, which everyone talks about, is the property per person ratio. But the other really critical one is how many people in your team, how many, and between them, how many investment properties do they own? If your property management team do not own investment properties, they're not the team for you. Their interests don't align with yours.
Yeah, I see this all the time where there's an inquiry from a landlord, someone who lives there, a tenant, and it's like, I want a new air conditioner because this one's not as cool or as warm, and then the agency will just say, yeah, we'll replace it. It's $2,500. We'll replace it. But a real property manager actually is on the side of obviously wanting to make sure that the property is working and fully functional. And you'll say, yes, replace the air conditioning if it needs replacing. But hey, why don't we just get a regas? Or like thinking about it where it's only $200, $300
or
service.
Have you cleaned it? Like in the middle of summer, a tenant will call me in the middle of summer and go, my air conditioner's not working. My team are trained. We do it in real life. Great comment, but before it's even serviced, with a split system, get me on FaceTime, climb on a chair, pull up the lid. Well, that's why it's not working. You haven't cleaned it, you dirty pig. Get the vent, unclip it, pull it out, rinse it under the sink, put it back. Call me in 20 minutes if it's still not working properly.
I probably need to clean our air conditioning unit now as well.
Of course you do. With cert, if we're discussing it, you need to clean it.
Simple as that. I did get, how often do you need to get it serviced though anyway?
Well,
you don't need to get it serviced. You just get it.
A good property manager should be checking that it's clean at every routine inspection, that there's no dust on it. So if they're cleaning it quarterly, it should work. And then if the owner is servicing it annually, there should be no problems with it whatsoever.
Annually, those things cost about $100 though.
$2 a week. So $2 a week. Let's put that in real terms. That's $2 a week. You want
clean filters every 2 weeks. That's a part-time job. Jesus.
No, 12 weeks. Every 12 weeks, which is what I said.
That is a part-time job.
Every quarter, you should be cleaning your filters.
The filters when you're back in the house. Wow, really bloody! I don't own an air conditioner, so I don't know what these rules are. But this sounds intense. A lot going on. You got to clean them.
I'm gonna think every 2 years. I'm happy to service mine every 2 years.
What was one of the things that I noticed with you, Jason, that previous property, the one we showed it was hoarders everywhere. What I really liked that you did during that exchange was you conditioned, I can't think of a better word, but you conditioned the tenant, and you said, hey, you need to clean up your act, and you communicated to them very clearly, you need to clean up this mess because we're not going to be stuck with it when you leave. If you want to stay in this property, you have to make sure it's all done and dusted and cleaned. And you set that expectation with them. So what is that? It's communication, obviously, but how do I get that out of my property manager in Queensland or Perth, or how do I kind of make sure that property manager has that type of level of communication?
Sure. Well, look, at the beginning of a lease, so the first thing, let's start from, and how much, like, I'm conscious of that clock. So sorry, guys. Okay. But I suppose anyone that wants to keep listening is happy to listen. And, the reality is I could talk for the rest of my life about property. So, when people come and look at our houses, we say during the open home process, you need to know that we are stricter than other agents. Our zero tolerance rent arrears policy is this: we will harass you on day one if you're buying. We are strict at routine inspections. We do check blood. So we make it clear that the minute they're looking at the house, what our expectations are. We don't scare them away and overdo it, but we certainly let them know that If you're going to rent from us, we have expectations that you need to fulfill. Then at the time of the lease sign, we reiterate what your rent's due on Thursday, so you have to pay it on Wednesday so that it hits my account on Thursday. When you get a water bill, we'll send it to you. Don't pay it through SA Water, pay it to us. You get 14 days to pay. You will get an overdue notice on day 15. So we set the bar.
Just communication, setting the
With
tone.
these messy tenants, the way I manage messy or hoarders, I say to the girls, if you're going to set your tenant up for failure if you make them bite off more than they can chew. So you say, hey, Joe, I can see that you've got a lot more stuff than is appropriate for this sized house. So before I come back, I'm going to re-inspect in 28 days. And I'd like this gone, this gone, this gone. I need the exhaust
those
fan
couches,
clean. I need this, I need this. But do you know what I mean? Like, give them 4, 5, or 6 big tasks, and then 4, 5, or 6 more tasks. And like I'd said to that owner, because we'd have happily kept that tenant, except they decided to move on anyway. But if they take my feedback and they do those couple of things, then you give them a couple more things. And if they're doing it, then I can work with them. I'm happy to keep a tenant if we can coach them. Now, they might not be bad people. Well, they're almost never bad people. But if they've gotten away with it from a previous property manager who hasn't been strict, that's not necessarily their fault any more than it is the owner's. You know, it's my job just to get them back on track.
Yeah. But that's purely communication. But it takes time, it takes energy and effort on your side of things to do that. If anyone has any questions, we've spoken about a lot of topics here. We've spoken about real deals. We've spoken about developments. We've spoken about renovations, subdivisions. Throw them in the comments, and we will start to get them.
There was one that did pop up, and I mean it's a very niche question. We'll throw it out there while somebody said, "Do property owners?" I would think the answer to this is probably no. But do you conduct an asbestos assessment? I mean, what's the
not a requirement in South Australia. So, and generally not a requirement. I don't know about other states, but generally not a residential requirement. It's generally a commercial requirement to have an asbestos register if the property's built, depending on the state, but usually before 1984, you usually need an asbestos register, but not relevant to residential. Now, we've got a couple of deals on the go at the moment where there are asbestos fences, and I certainly look for any breakages, because if there's any breakages, you should identify them and rectify them if you can. But otherwise, no. The short answer is no.
Yeah, fair enough. For your question about,
but if you're going to do a development, keep in mind that asbestos is going to budget 15 grand additional for the removal of it.
Of the fences. How do you think about asbestos removal internally? So for instance, in South Australia, right, a lot of the houses have the eaves are asbestos. Does that turn you off and you're like, hell no, I'm not buying one of these houses? Or how do you kind of think about that?
Well, I do my best to buy houses that I get to keep. So as long as they're in good shape, just put fresh paint on them. But if a house is going to come down and you can see a reasonable amount of asbestos, you should account for $15,000 for a full house. Ross and I did a development in Glengowrie, and we pulled down one of those little red brick outhouses, like a little rumpusy room thing, and that had some asbestos. That cost us about $1,400, but that was a 3 meter by 4 meter. So, and again, pay a professional. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
What's the I suppose do you just assume that there is going to be asbestos in a certain age, or how do you get somebody out there to check it? Because in SA you've only got the 2 days for the pest and building and all that sort of.
if it's what we call post-war in
Yeah.
South Australia, which is that 60s styled, which is that very first deal I showed you, that red brick.
Yep.
I just assume it's there.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah,
If
someone's
it's-
popped in the
if
comments.
it's
It's asbestos eaves everywhere.
1960/1970, then I just assume it's asbestos.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair call.
And it's everywhere in Australia. Everywhere. Those red big properties, everywhere. No matter what, you're going to find it.
Mhm.
Yes,
And
it
again,
exists.
as long as it's in good condition and you paint it, who cares? It's only,
And
it's
it's
actually
only if it's a problem,
not-
it's a problem.
And it's not that expensive to remove internally. It gets very expensive, 15 grand when you have a massive, 10 meter, 15 meter, 8 meter fence. That's a lot of asbestos. But internally, a couple of eaves,
Just in the
that's
walls.
Yeah,
Walls and
I think as long as I think if it's less than 4 square meters, you can do it yourself with the right
Yeah,
protective
protective.
gear and masks.
the hazmat. Or
Now,
whatever
I
it is.
wouldn't, but you can, and as long as you dispose of it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question though, Jason. What is next for your property investing sort of journey? Because have you got more sort of properties you want to buy, or?
So I have 2 goals at this minute. One I've already shared with you, which is a neighbourhood centre to move our family business into, as it will be one of the tenants in a neighbourhood centre. My personal purchases at this second, Joe's been to my place. I've got this incredible little apartment in Bowden with these unbelievable city views, and there's an agent or an ex-agent in the building who lives in a really stunning 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom sub-penthouse that he's promised he'll sell to me when he sells. So I'm keeping my cash freed up. So that
You don't
that'll
need
be
it. What are you going to do with
has
a
he given you a
3-bed,
time frame?
2-bath?
Well, I need 2 bath. I'm one of
Just
6
in
children,
case, Joe.
everyone. I need
never
you to
know.
understand I don't share bathrooms. I have to have 2 bathrooms. I don't share bathrooms.
I think it's a
I
good
don't
idea.
even share a bathroom with a partner. I make them go to the spare bathroom. But I need a 3rd bedroom because I need a home office.
That's very
I'm working
true.
from home more often. I need a home office. So, and I've worked hard, and I'm at the stage where I'd like a nice, because then that would be my forever home. So that's my goal for the next 2 to 3 years. But never say never. I'm sure plenty of people. To conclude, though, the one thing going back to selling that I did fail to cover off is remember the agents that brought you those off-market deals and stay loyal to them. I can't, I get called often with off-market deals. So do you, Joe. So do you, Jeff. And they happen because you've established trusting relationships with people that know you're good for the money. Most importantly, they know they can take your money to the bank, and they know us well enough to know that we've vetted our clients enough that they can take our clients' money to the bank. And if you make money out of a deal with an agent and they're a good agent, repay the loyalty and sell through that agent, because they'll reward you down the track with another deal.
Oh,
And
Can't express that enough.
And definitely mention that when you're buying the property. If you're looking to buy one of these subdivision blocks, and let's say you're buying a 1-into-3 where you can keep one of the houses, say to the agent, hey, I'm buying this property knowing that I'm going to sell it, and I want you to sell it for me. And obviously they're going to have to get the best for their vendor, but they're very incentivized for it. So there are, incentives that you can throw at them like that. Obviously you can't break the law and do anything like that, but you can definitely help your situation.
And of course, some agents are douchebags, so don't do it if they're a douche. But if they're a good guy, and plenty of them are good guys, most of my best mates are agents.
This is a great question.
Great question. Come
As a
on.
buy-in, I think I know Jason's answer to this, but
What
I'll
is
ask
your
you
answer to this, Jeff? What is your answer to this?
Neutral
So,
and eventually
what's the
becomes
question?
positive. So this is by Emma, and thanks for all your comments. Like, you've been smashing on fire with the comments, Emma. As a buy and hold investor, would you purchase a property which is neutral, so neutrally cash flow, whatever? Yeah, sort of not.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's ignore tax for this purpose, and eventually becomes positive, but no, it's likely not likely to have much capital growth. My answer would be no.
My entire investment portfolio strategy has been entirely based on this fact, Emma. It's as simple as that. I started my first investment with $3,000. My parents matched me dollar for dollar on my first investment at 42,000. And the way I see it today, I've never used, because I talked to you earlier about I use that as a business. I've never used a cent of my money since that day. The
Have you just
investments
leveraged off that one property?
My portfolio started with, so I've made millions of dollars from $3,000. So I started my portfolio with $3,000, and I've never used a cent of my own money. So the answer is, Emma, time will be your friend. It's as simple as that.
So as a buy and hold investor, would you purchase a property which is neutral and eventually becomes positive? But no.
Absolutely,
it's not likely.
I cannot comprehend that we live in a country where people go out of their way to deliberately lose money in order to avoid tax. I live in the best country on earth. I should have to pay for the privilege of living here. I pay my taxes. I'm happy to pay my taxes. And people go, oh, let's work out ways to avoid paying $4,000 a year in tax. Let me show you a way to pay an extra $4,000 a year in tax. Because if you pay an extra $4,000 a year in tax, you've made an extra $12,000.
Or
that's
whatever, roughly.
Like good. Yeah, Emma, you're on the money.
I'm just interested, Emma. What gives you the what do you think? Why don't you think the property won't, or the area won't grow? Is it because it's the asset type, or is it the area? And maybe it's constrained by budget, but anyway.
And let's keep in mind, even if time is not your friend, Emma, right? And it's neutral, and you paid a deposit, and this is the other thing that people annoys me about property. People go, I paid $195,000 and it's still worth $195,000. Well, hang on a second. It was neutrally geared. So you paid a $20,000 deposit. Someone else paid it off for 30 years. You paid $20,000 and you made $200,000. You still 10 times your money. You didn't pay $195,000 for the house. You personally paid $20,000.
There you go.
Yeah. What's your answer, Jeff? I feel like
I like I like to see if I can add value to a property. So I mean, I suppose it depends on somebody's. Yeah, I'm a definitely value add. So if I need to buy in an area that I don't think, or an asset that's going to get capital growth, I want to see capital growth. So, but yeah, I get your point though. The time is your friend.
Yeah.
And look, once again, if you're starting out, you can still, even where I bought my first one, like in the northern suburbs, where those tiny, you can still get them for $250,000, right? Now, I wouldn't live in them today, but you can still get them for $250,000. They still generate a $320 a week return on your money. So as long as you've put down a good investment, they are entirely paying for themselves. In 25 years from now, you own it outright and you put down a $25,000 deposit. That's still a good day out. And the great thing about neutral and positive gearing is you can duplicate that. The mistake people make, let's use Joe and his partner as an example, or you and your wife, Jeff. Young family, you you're young, you've both got double incomes, you buy a house, you negatively gear at $100. Oh, it's only $100. We can afford it. We're double income. Then you buy another one and you can afford it because it's only $200 and you're double income. And then straight people unfortunately have babies. And so one of the people give up work. You go from 2 incomes to 1 income, and $200 a week negative gearing actually is really significant financial hardship. There's no such thing as financial hardship on positively and neutrally geared properties. You can duplicate it till the cows come home.
Yeah, this is it's an interesting one again here. I think we'll have to finish. We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes. So Paul, you're as fresh as a daisy, Jason. Like look at you go. Like a lot of guests, they'd be. I think, are you okay, Joe? I think Joe needs to make.
I'm golden, ready to go.
We'll finish on this.
I could talk about this for the rest of my life. That's the problem.
You probably will, though.
When Joe and I
get you on in 2 years. Yeah, all my properties are either positively geared or neutral. All are now in interest only. Would you recommend? And we can't really recommend changing to principal and interest. If I do, then I fear they will become negatively geared. Well,
we'll do them one at a time.
Yeah, I mean,
if you have a portfolio and it has spare cash in it because you treat it like a business, then you should be making if at the end of each calendar year you have a surplus of cash, then of course it should go on to the debt.
Oh, here we go. Somebody loves.
we got some fans here. I could listen for the rest of my life. Solid answer. But my answer to this.
There you go.
My answer to this is, what's the point? Like, why pay principal and interest when you have an offset account, which is doing exactly the same thing? So you can save another $100,000 and put it and lock it away, or you can put it in your interest only. The only rebuttal to that I've come up with is you do pay a little bit more in interest only repayments as opposed to principal and interest, but it's very minor for the access to the capital. So if interest rates rise, if you need to do a renovation, if you want to do a subdivision, you now have access to 150, 200K of cash. So just keep putting that money away. You don't need to, I mean, no
look, if we go back to,
you go, sorry.
If we go back to Emma's example though, where she's fearful that there won't be capital growth.
Never grow.
Right?
Yeah. Then
you must have P&I as part of the strategy, because that way when you cash out, you own your $200,000 house outright and you've paid $20,000 for it. Do you know what I mean? So and there were plenty in my the last 2 years have been like, plenty of us have made a shit ton of money in the last 2 years, or we've made a shit ton of equity, and equity is still money. Okay. But up until then, my strategy wasn't, my buy and hold strategy had nothing to do with capital gain. It was buy, pay down. If I sell for what I bought for when I retire, I'm golden. The fact that we've had capital growth is just a gift with purchase. It's just cream on top.
I'll throw in, and we'll finish off on this because I think okay. The other challenge is your life and circumstance will change. Eventually, the bank will force you to start paying principal and interest. Like you may get 2 5-year interest only terms, but eventually they're going to say no. Look, unless you can. Yeah, because you're going to, unless you can figure out a way to keep your circumstances roughly the same, they're going to say, well, you can't continue to, you may be able to refinance it somewhere else and reset the loan term. But yes, at some stage, you'll probably need to pay principal and interest.
Yeah, but you make that as a part of the strategy, right?
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not. You have to factor that in a later point in time, but. Yeah, I love interest only. I think it gives you a lot of capital to play with. But
not a fan.
It
played a part in my life, but I'm not a fan.
I'm not disciplined enough.
Unfortunately, my mum's Lebanese. We don't like that.
No, definitely.
All right.
Your
Cash is
mum's
king.
Lebanese, but you're not Lebanese.
Well, I'm part Lebanese, so I'm,
Is Wright, is that Scottish? Oh, anyways, no, we're going to get on.
no, well, that's my dad. You know, mate, puppy. You know, Bitzer.
Yeah, bits of everything. So, Joe, finish off. Well, I'll do it because where if people want to learn, if people want more of Jason in their life, where should they go to say hello and
Sure.
have a chat?
The easiest way is to go find me on Facebook and or Instagram at Essential Property Management, or go to our website, essentialpm.com.au is the easiest way. I could talk about this for the rest of my life, so reach out.
People will listen to you as well.
Jason
Thanks.
is a fantastic property manager. If you are considering property management, we just did a 3-bed 1-bath to a 4-bed 2-bath. It hasn't even been completed, and we already have $660 a week rent. Unreal, Jason. To be able to pull that out, and to be able to help the client through the journey, it's silly not to. Anyone that is adding value to their portfolio, Jason's the man for it. So I can't recommend him enough. He is the best in the business of what he does. So use him.
Even helps you in other states as well. If you have maybe I shouldn't say.
No,
that.
I did. I called it. I was a deal in WA.
That's a Joe special. Don't call him.
This is a head scratcher. What am I doing? And then
I found it in seconds though, didn't I? Like it was seconds.
Look, I found it in hours. Okay.
Yeah. The plaudits are coming through. Thanks.
People are loving it.
Thanks, Kylie. Love your work. All right,
thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.
Fun.
Sorry I took everyone's night, but I genuinely had fun. So.
Thanks, guys. Let's go buy a property. Let's get it done.